All right, welcome to the second episode, and this time I am not alone. I am here with my very good friend, Mr. Justin Riehm, who I've known for quite some time. How long have we known each other, man?
It's been quite a few years. I mean,
Yeah.
we went to high school, but we didn't talk much.
That's right. It's like we were in high school, but it's like we would just sort of pass each other and go, "Oh yeah, I kind of know that."
Yeah,
guy.
like I remember, I was at Malin for a little while, and you went to Malin, and then that's how we started hanging out.
Yep. Well, cool, man. So let's see. Today I don't really have anything totally scheduled that I want to discuss, but I mean, I'm sure we'll get to just a plethora of stuff. Probably talk about the state of politics a little bit more. But I've noticed you've been reading a book that, at least, I've noticed that every day when you come over, you're diligently making it through a book right there, and you have it with you. So what is that, man?
All right. Well, I'm reading two books at the moment. The first one I'm almost finished with. I got about 60 pages left. It's called The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. It's by this.
What is that?
It's by this Japanese writer. His name is Haruki Murakami. And if I had to classify it as anything, I'd say it's like an existentialist mystery.
An existentialist mystery.
Yeah, so the book starts out with this guy and his wife, and their cat goes missing, and he's looking for his cat, and then it just takes a bunch of crazy turns with he's out of work, and then his wife leaves him at some point in the book, and he gets all these random visitors. It's
oh wow,
it's just a tale. And
so it's what does it deal with existential? What is it what is a crisis? I mean, I don't know. I'm very ignorant when it comes to that kind of stuff. When it comes to just anything dealing with philosophy or existentialism, or I know very little, man.
Well, I guess it's existentialist is I guess the underlying themes of the book deals with life, and
right? Yeah.
What the way you go through life and how you spend your time, and love and all that.
Yeah.
And mortality.
Oh god, sounds like a real picker-upper, man.
Oh,
real chipper.
Yeah, it deals he's the type of guy. He's the type of writer that deals with very serious topics, death.
Yeah.
And trauma.
So it's not a poolside vacation read.
I mean, it could be, but it's very good.
Right. I'll definitely check that out, man. I am a notoriously slow reader though, which is weird because I'm a history major and we have to read so much. But I take so many shortcuts. If I get bogged down in books, I'll just get them on audiobook or something.
Yeah.
So I will definitely check that out. But it's adding another book to my reading list. I feel I don't know, man. It's just there's such a numerous amount of books that I've never read that I mean to read. I bet you the majority of books I own I haven't read.
There's a lot of books I've owned that I haven't even read. There's books I've had on my shelf. It's been on my shelf for at least 5 years. I'm gonna read someday, but who knows?
You can do that though with books. You can go into a used bookstore with $20 and walk out with basically 15 books.
Depending on which kind of books you get.
Yeah, as long as you're not in Barnes and Noble trying to
no.
don't do that.
I don't shop at Barnes and Noble.
I have before, I do sometimes, but it's always for, I don't know, what is it? What was the last book I bought at Barnes and Noble? They do have certain deals. You can go in there and look at the bargain bin and find sometimes there'll be deals. If you know a phone number that has a Barnes & Noble account, you'll get 60% off a book that's already $12 or something, which is an okay deal. But if you don't have the Barnes & Noble account, it's ridiculous. In fact, I noticed that with movies.
Yeah.
They'll have a DVD copy of let's say Skyfall. Let's just say an old movie that I bet you could find at Walmart in the bargain bin for $5.
Yeah.
They'll have it priced at $35, but you get 75% off with your Barnes and Noble membership. It's weird. That's the way they do things. Who would ever come in here and just buy this without a membership? It's no one would, and that's how they force you to get the membership. But anyway, I digress. I'm getting a little off topic. Well, we can't really get off topic today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't shop at Barnes & Noble. Actually, what I've been doing lately, every time I go out to Asheville, I've been taking old books I find in my house that I have no use for and just exchanging them for other books. So I'm not actually spending any money.
Where do you do that at?
And Mr. K is out in Asheville.
Mr. K's, you can literally just exchange books.
That's kind of cool. You can exchange books for credit.
well, I get it. Like, okay, that's cool, man. I didn't actually know that. I'm probably gonna do that.
Yeah, it's a good way to save money.
Definitely gonna like take books I haven't read and exchange them for books I'll never read. Like, that's probably what I'm gonna do. But yeah, man, that's cool. So,
yeah.
But I'm trying to think of like what all the books I'm reading right now are for like school. Like I have to read the Iliad again.
The Iliad. I saw that copy of the Iliad you had.
Yeah,
I've never read it.
I'm trying to think. I read it in high school when I was going through that like Greek mythology super cool phase because I was really into the God of War video games. Like I was totally into them, so I was like gonna read like anything I could read about like Greek mythology and I know the Iliad's not really like Greek mythology. Again, it's not Greek mythology, but it's like it's kind of a mix, right? The Iliad's kind of the tale of like the Spartan, the Greek Trojan War and all that stuff. But no, I've not actually sat down and read the like real Iliad, like sat down and read it from like cover to cover, back front to back. Yeah. So man, I have to read that super soon, and I've like barely cracked it open. It's bad.
I mean, I guess that's a book you need to read. I mean, just get to it, man.
Yeah, that's what.
Fun.
Well, that's what they say, right? Is like the Iliad's like if you're stranded on an island, the Iliad, and you can only bring like 5 books. The Iliad's supposed to be one of them.
Well, if I was gonna be stranded on an island, I wouldn't bring the Iliad, but
yeah, I probably wouldn't either. That's what you're supposed to say.
That's what you're supposed to say. But honestly, I actually prefer more current literature to older literature. I find most books I try to read, it's like pre-20th century, to be very dense and hard to get through.
Yeah. I feel, dude, I have tried to read War and Peace so many times that I feel like, because I just can't. Like, I just don't think I can. Yeah. Every time I start it, I realize that I've been daydreaming for 20 minutes and I have no idea what I've been reading, and I go, oh man. Like, I feel it's one of those books that I just like, it's just a slog.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just a slog.
There might be some like book snobs that like will hate on me for this, but like I don't know. I think literature in general has just evolved to a point where most modern books are like can reach a wider audience.
They can reach a wider audience, and they can deal with all the same themes.
Yeah, but again, not make you feel like you're doing homework.
So I don't know, but I'm not saying don't read War and Peace or like that. The classics, put that in,
classics,
aren't like good. It's just, man, I am not one of the people. I'm not the type of person that can just sit down and enjoy reading something like that. Like, I'm not going to sit down and be like, what I'm going to do with my Saturday? I'm going to read Tell of Two Cities right now. No. like, probably not.
I had a similar experience with Wuthering Heights.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't get, I was about 20, 30 pages in, I just put it down.
Yeah.
I couldn't get through it.
Yep. And it's weird because I feel like such a phony because like I have like War and Peace and A Tale of Two Cities, all that stuff just like on my bookshelf, and it's like, I hope nobody brings it up that's like read it, that's like an English major. I hope nobody's like, oh yeah, let's talk about that. I have to like just be like, well, I don't really know a lot about what happens in it. Like, I don't know, it's sort of like the hang your head of shame and admit that you haven't read the book on your bookshelf.
Nah, he just called you out as being fake.
That's right.
You're just a big old phony.
He's a big old phony. That's right. God, that's hilarious, man. But now I have to read the Iliad, and what else am I like reading right now? Well, I'm reading just a lot of history books, just a lot of textbooks.
Yeah,
I'm reading
nonfiction.
Yeah, I'm reading a bunch of like what is like the other thing I'm reading? I can't remember like the name of the book. It's like, since it's such a textbook, I kind of just like read it. It's it's a 20th century like history book. I'm studying like the Treaty of Versailles and the post World War I, sort of all the multitude of treaties and sort of the people that tried to outlaw war and then failed. Pretty drastically with World War II breaking out.
World War II was pretty much the outcome of that.
Yeah, it was like, hey guys, we're not going to ever do this again. And it happened again, and in many ways was even worse. Because this time there was like just countless civilian deaths because of like aerial bombardments. Yeah. But
I don't know, especially with the state of like geopolitics today, if there was ever World War III, I think it would just spell the end of humanity.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like, there's a really good book you should read. It's by I forget the guy's first name, but his last name is, I just know him as it's by Quinlan, and it's like basically an understanding nuclear weapons book. Oh man, it's really good. It like breaks down kind of like a lot of concepts that you don't really think about when it comes to nuclear weapons, about kind of like the development. It does do that kind of like the milquetoast, like kind of the development of nuclear weapons, but it also deals with just kind of like what that means for warfare and what that means for humanity. Kind of having a weapon that we know we can never actually use, that we have a weapon that is really just a reset button on planet Earth. Like, it's pretty much would just unravel all institutions, all like societies, basically all of humanity would be just totally thrown a curveball if we were to actually like enter a nuclear war with somebody. Man, it's wild. Like, so that's a really good book if you want to like read about potential World War III kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know, man. That's the thing. Like, I don't know if nuclear war. I don't want to say that nuclear war is impossible, because it just isn't. Clearly, it's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean
these things, they exist.
Yeah.
They exist. And if your push came to shove, and it's like, hey, our nation is falling apart, but like, let's just use nukes. So, okay, but also there is an argument that because they exist, basically we've hit the pause button on like the nations that exist now kind of have to exist. Like, you can't just, like, for example, if we went to war with China, just war with China. First of all, that would be catastrophic in general. But let's say we did, that war would probably be just like, I don't think we'd ever like all out go to war without the option of like, oh, we just won't use nukes, right? Like, so the argument is like, that's what's preventing us from actually declaring war on these various nations, because it's kind of an impossibility without undoing your own nation. So I don't know, man. Nuclear weapons are wild. So World War III, what would spark World War III, do you think? Donald Trump? It'd just be Trump.
I mean, Trump, he could do it, but like with the state, let's see. I mean, looking at the world today, the major players is the United States, Russia, China, and those.
Let's just say the EU as a big bulk now.
The EU is a big bulk, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know, but with Brexit, they're gonna like
it's like falling apart, kind of. Yeah, no, it's like falling. But the Brexit thing is so stupid. Like, they're not actually. That's the thing. The big argument now is like, well, I think a lot of people are realizing that they can't actually abandon the European Union. Like, at least a lot of like UK residents are realizing you can't just abandon the European Union the way I think that many of them thought they could or wanted to. So,
I mean, I'm not as familiar with the Brexit issue as I'd like to be.
Oh, I'm not either. I mean, I'm not like an expert on any of that. Yeah. Well, the problem seems to be like, in what ways do they stay in? Do they keep kind of business as usual, like economically, like in terms of like trade? Yeah. Like, they kind of need to keep trading, because the European.
So was Britain on switch to the euro? They still have the pound.
No, they don't They don't use the euro. That's why Britain has always been the kind of like lame duck of the European Union. Like, if anybody was going to leave the EU, like, let's say it was 2015, and you were going to place a bet on who was going to leave the EU, it's a pretty safe bet that you'd vote on like England or the United Kingdom. So yeah, because they never switched to the euro, and they kind of, I don't know, and they've always had. So the real anxiety seems to be this idea that they can't make their own laws without, which, there are certain sort of regulations, and you couldn't just do whatever you wanted. That's the whole point of being part of the European Union, is that you are part of something larger. So you don't have complete and utter freedom. Yeah. But the idea that they couldn't also govern themselves, or we're not a sovereign nation, is completely false. It's just a super false narrative that people seem to talk about, and it's just kind of bullshit. Like, it's just kind of bullshit. But I don't know, man. The other problem was immigration, right? Yeah. Is that they were getting tired of, just like I said, influxes of cheap labor, man. That's been an issue forever.
That's an issue for any country.
For any country forever. It's just influxes of cheap labor. And so it's like, well...
Well, it seems to me Britain, out of all the European countries, seems to still have the strongest sense of nationalism.
Yeah. Well, I don't know France though.
I'm France, but I don't know about France, but my family.
They almost voted in Marie Le Pen. Remember,
Marine Le Pen, she
like,
almost won. But
she almost won, yeah.
My Germany has no nationalism. I can tell you that.
They've outlawed nationalism.
I mean, just about. I mean, I can tell you this because my dad's side of the family is from Germany,
mm-hmm.
and you go over there, it's they don't hardly ever express any kind of national pride at all.
Really?
They don't they don't even put up anywhere near as many flags as American dudes. About the only time you'll see a bunch of German flags put up in public is when they're playing in the World Cup.
Right.
Soccer is the only thing left that gives them a sense of national pride.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I know. There for the longest time, it really did seem like the World Cup was the last place that you'd find hardcore European nationalism.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes from a professor, his name was Dr. Durando, and he said that nationalism is a lot like pornography.
Yeah.
I can't define it, or too much. Let me say that again.
Yeah.
Too much nationalism is like pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. So that, I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. So it's there for a long time. It seemed like the World Cup was the last sort of vestige of European nationalism. I don't know anymore though, man. Right-wing groups are popping up all over Europe.
Yeah, I think honestly, Trump's presidency has helped stir up nationalism, especially white nationalism.
Yeah, man, it's legitimized it.
Yeah.
It's at least made them pop their head out of their little holes, their little goblin holes, and be like, oh, well, we can actually just be borderline fascisty these days. It's fine, whatever. Just sort of just nationalist to the point of super problems, man. I don't know, what is that? What is the political party in France that's that Marie Le Pen is it the National Front? I don't know. I can't think of the actual party's name.
I can't either.
I should have my phone with me or get on the computer and Google it, but I don't really want to do that right now. But yeah, anyway, so I can't remember the name, which sucks. But yeah, no, man, there's a quite a bit. I would say that this has been sort of brewing for a while,
mm-hmm.
but like you said, with the election of Donald Trump, it seems that at least you can't say that it's impossible for people that hold those kind of views to get their candidate elected, or to get someone that not that the only people that supported Donald Trump or any of these sort of far right candidates are just Nazis or something. No, but I'm just saying that they're pretty excited Trump won. I mean, they definitely.
There's a few countries in Europe that have been taken over by extreme right wingers, Poland and Hungary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's true. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. What is going on in Poland and Hungary?
I'm not entirely familiar with it, but from what I've read, the governments they voted in those countries are very far right and very not friendly towards immigrants at all.
Yeah. Well, that's a complicated thing right there, isn't it? Because I get in some trouble with some friends because I do believe that not all cultures are created equally. They're just not, to me.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, and the problem though with saying that is among some of these hate groups, they've changed kind of some of their rhetoric and some of their talking points into kind of we're here for cultural, to preserve our culture, and what is that group, the Identity Europa people?
Well, I've never heard of
them. They're kind of the imagery they use and kind of their propaganda and. It's a lot of throwbacks to Greek and sort of the classical idea of Western society, right? Mm-hmm. They use a lot of just for example, an Identity Europa propaganda poster will essentially have it'll have some kind of Greek statue on it, right? And it says protect your heritage, and it's basically just white nationalism. It's just white supremacy, and it's just been kind of prettied up, if you will.
Yeah.
But the problem though is, to me, is that I do think certain cultures are better, right? If your culture practices equality, if it preaches, democracy and freedom, and it social progress, it sort of tries to balance, the all encompassing question of balancing societal good and individual liberty, right? Mm-hmm. So if your culture is taking that into consideration and making real, and it really has a sense of honor and equality and all that stuff. And that's fine. And if you compare it to a culture that thinks women should not be allowed, should not have be able to hold legal office, or that they're not equal, or that, you know, gay people are inhuman, or blah blah blah, right?
Well, yeah, it's like equality, like a country like that would be Saudi Arabia. Like,
yes, Saudi Arabia is kind of the go-to of just like garbage culture.
I mean, it just reeks with male chauvinism, and religious intolerance.
Yeah, and just institutionalized misogyny, just like horrible. But yeah, a lot of Middle Eastern countries are that way. That's the problem, though.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting at, is that, like, criticizing that stuff is good.
Yeah.
You should criticize that. The problem is that a lot of times, on a surface level, it seems that the people criticizing it are, oh, look, they're fighting for, like, what's right. But when you dig a little deeper, you kind of scratch the surface, and it turns out they're just white supremacists that hate brown people. Yeah. And it's like, oh, shit, man. Like, that's the problem. That's why I think those on the left really try to, like, no, we have to respect all cultures and all this stuff, and there is no cultural superiority and stuff like that, which I understand. I get that's coming from a really good place.
Yeah.
But I think you also might lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish.
Well,
here.
yeah, it's like we want to unite all people, but not everyone wants to unite all people.
Exactly.
There's just dividers out there.
There's dividers out there, and some of those dividers encompass entire nations and entire regions.
Yeah.
And I don't want to paint with that broad of a brush, but man, I don't know, even like countries like Turkey that I once would be like, oh yeah, Turkey, like, it's kind of an example of a kind of a Middle Eastern European country.
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore. It's
Erdogan is like, he's a bad guy.
He's a dictator.
He's a dictator, and plus he's invading Syria and committing genocide against the Kurds.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, like, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And that's another good example of how quick a country that is... At least, Turkey was never perfect, let's be honest. It was never perfect. But at least it was a NATO ally. It was sort of, it was kind of the gateway to the Middle East kind of thing. And
NATO, Turkey, they added Turkey to NATO because it was in a very strategic spot. Like, it was almost like...
You could stack it with nukes and get them to Russia real quick.
Yeah, it was a buffer between Europe and the Soviet Union.
Yeah. And like, Turkey just always had a lot of interesting things, like their military would always try to fight back against, like, an Islamic government.
Yeah, that was actually like written into their constitution by Ataturk after World War I.
Yeah,
where they couldn't, no one could establish a theocracy in Turkey. Yep. So the military had, like, authority to, like, remove people that try to do that.
Yeah, now Erdogan's using, like, Islam as a way to just, like, maintain power. It's which is just.
Well, the radical Islamists, I think, kind of learned that lesson, and to the point is like, okay, so all we have to do is infiltrate the military.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think that's just a good example, man, of how a country that was once a democracy can just fall into that sort of strongman, just dictatorship, anti-democratic dictatorship. Yeah. And so I don't think I think it's a good example of no one should just think that democracy is a given. Don't take it for granted. I mean, you have to be vigilant. You have to keep your eyes open. Don't just assume your country's, like, going to remain great.
Well, the way I look at democracy, like, democracy is about participation. Yeah. So people, like, in order to keep a democracy going, any kind of democracy, like, people have to, like, get involved. Like,
Yeah. That's the thing, man. And that's why I think when historians, now obviously 50 years from now or 100 years from now, and historians talk about, the problems in our current political system or societal issues, at least American societal issues. Yeah. They're not going to just point to 2016 and go, and that's where it all started. They're going to talk about years prior, decades prior. Because, it's just an ongoing, thing. That's what I like about history. Everything connects to something in the past. So you can trace it back as long as you want to. But I truly think that the Citizens United ruling is going to be looked at as kind of the real turning point of where America stopped really being that democratic.
Well, the Citizens United was basically saying that corporations can buy elections.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can basically just Yeah, you can just elect your own people. Corporations can just basically pick a candidate, dump money on them until they win, and then they'll just push their agenda.
Yeah, and with the economy, especially with now in the coming years, the big issue I think is dealing with like you see corporations are getting bigger and you're seeing a lot of mergers.
Yeah.
I mean, you're seeing
Look at Disney and Fox.
And you're seeing people like Jeff Bezos just like accumulate vast fortunes.
God, isn't it gross that Jeff Bezos is that wealthy? And
I think his net worth is like what 140 billion.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like that's where I don't know, man. That's where like
he's like almost a modern day robber baron.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I don't know, man. Like that's where it's like redistribution of wealth kind of needs to happen. And no, I'm not saying you like do it violently, but my God, the fact that Jeff Bezos can be that wealthy and we still can't just provide health care to people. Like, the resources are there. The money is there. Look at this. You can't have income inequality like that. You can't have people like Jeff Bezos walking around with that much money, and meanwhile there's other people that are trying to basically feed themselves with social programs and can't afford rent anywhere and just don't actually know what to do. They pretty much are one hospital bill away from being homeless.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You can't have that and be a healthy society. That's not like, oh, look, this is totally fleshed out. It's healthy, thriving. Our society's thriving because of this.
We're not thriving unless everyone is thriving, and like these are the type of issues that like create resentment and like eventually just lead to revolutions.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's the one thing about the revolution to me is like I think that there's a type of revolution that is completely possible in America, and it's not the kind where people just share bullshitty memes on Facebook all day and never organize it. Exactly, it's not accomplishing anything, and another thing seems to be that, like, the level of political indifference I see. Yeah. And it's that, when I have friends, man, and, like, we have friends. I'm going to say we have friends. I'm not going to name any names, but I talk to them, and it's like, they'll be struggling, right? Like, they can't, like, pay their rent, they get car payments, that they can't afford health care, but they make too much to get any sort of Obamacare subsidies, which is why Obamacare is a mess and shouldn't be considered that much of a success, even though I'm a Democrat.
Yeah.
But let's not try to pretend Obamacare was a solution when it wasn't. But they don't really seem to know why these problems exist. And that, to me, is the real issue. That, like, people just don't really seem to understand. They kind of just sit back and go, well, times are hard. And they kind of get suckered into nonsensical right-wing arguments. Because I think the left is the worst at pitching its ideas.
Well, then, today it's just horrible. I mean, essentially the right just, like, talks to, like, common folk in a language that they can understand, like simple talk. Yeah. The left doesn't articulate its ideas that way.
It doesn't. And one of the things, too, man, like, it sucks because it's like, why are all these poverty-stricken people voting for, like, Koch brothers funded candidates? It's terrible. It doesn't make any sense. Like, that's the opposite of what y'all should be doing.
Well, the thing is, that's the thing. They don't really know what they're voting for. They just see a guy who talks pretty and is like, oh, I'm gonna cut your taxes and get your job back. And it's like,
all right,
got it.
Yep, that's true. God, dude. But yeah, that's the thing, man, and that's why I think if Democrats don't get it together, they'll lose in 2020. But the blue wave in 2018, I don't know, man. It's not looking as good as I once hoped.
I mean, it's possible, but I'm not holding my breath for it.
Yeah, because I'm just not seeing the kind of excitement for people. At least here there is no way that Philip Price is gonna win.
Well, no, Mark Meadows, he's got that Coke money, man.
He got that Coke money.
He's chairman of the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that dude isn't... Philip Price is not going to defeat Mark Meadows.
I mean, he's got my vote.
Yeah, well, he's got my vote, too. It's just... Nobody seems to know who he is. And everyone just seems to think, like, literally, is there anything worse to people sometimes? You'll, like, talk to somebody about, like issues, and you'll get what they want to do, and you're like, all right, man, that sounds like we could work with that. And then you go, would you ever vote for a Democrat? And they just basically throw up in their mouth and say no. And it's just like, damn it. Like, that just sucks.
Oh, and they just have, like, a few images of that. Like, I mean, especially, like, people I talk to in my family. It's like, my mom she was conflicted about who she was going to vote for in 2016 because like she usually votes Republican, but she didn't much care for Trump. But she eventually just settled on Trump because like Hillary's for killing babies.
That's what it is, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they can always bounce back to or basically retreat to at least, is that no matter what you say, the Democrats for killing children. And how do you argue against that? Like, how do you actually, like, once someone says, yeah, but you guys kill babies, you go, oh, man.
Well,
like,
I mean,
because,
they don't, the Democrats, they need to harp more on, like, economic, structural issues rather than just, like, social, like, gay marriage, abortion.
That's the problem, man, though, is that's how you win a Democratic primary, though.
Yeah.
You basically harp on those the entire time to out-left all your opponents in a primary, and then by the time it becomes the general, that's all you're known for. And it just sucks, man. And because, I don't know, Democrats used to know, or at least those on the left used to know how to play the game. Mm-hmm. They used to know how to actually win at politics. They just used to know how to do it. And it's like now it's just, oh, dude. They just think that you can just, because I think they're not willing to go left on any kind of economic issue, because they're all, I mean, everybody's addicted to money, man.
I mean, money's like the most. Yeah. America runs on money.
So you think you can just be like socially woke and just like win, and it's just like, nope, it's just not enough. It's just not.
Yeah.
And but yeah, dude, like that's the thing. I mean, I hope I'm wrong on that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, I just think it'll be a mess. But.
I think the thing is, I think it's actually possible. Like, especially with our generation, like there's enough votes to actually like get these kinds of people elected. Yeah. It's just that you got to organize, you got to get the message out.
Oh man, but you know how many millennials voted in the 2014 midterm?
How many?
It's like 14%.
Yeah,
that's grossly low. And look, I hate the whole like, yeah, y'all's generation sucks, which comes from like our like parents and grandparents. Mm-hmm. But honestly, when I look at 14% voter turnout, I just don't want to only say that there was nobody to vote for. Look, Hillary Clinton was a bad candidate that couldn't have got a fish to go back into water, okay? Yeah. Like, her trying to get somebody to vote for was just like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not every Democratic candidate that has lost to a Republican is Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Some of them were fine.
Yeah.
And so getting millennials out to vote is just very difficult. And I think it's only because, I don't know, man, I think it's maybe our parents' generation just didn't instill that kind of patriotism into their kids. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know, I just feel like when I was growing up, it was like, you voted. It's like what you did.
Yeah.
But a lot of other people I found, they're like, yeah, my parents don't vote. And I'm like, oh man, your parents don't vote, you don't vote, nobody votes. And it's like, well, what do you want out of like your country then?
I know, it's like, I think most of it's just apathy and the general feeling that their vote doesn't really help them in any way. Like, no matter who they vote for, I'm just screwed.
Yeah, I'm just screwed. Yeah. And look, I'm going to say that the Democrats and the Republicans are too much alike, but to pretend that they're the exact same political parties is foolish. Yeah. I just think, like, the both sides are the same argument to me.
I'm not, and I'll say this for me personally, I'm not the biggest supporter of the Democratic Party.
Well, no, I'm a Democrat and I'm not the biggest supporter of the Democratic Party.
I'm on the left and like, I gotta vote for somebody because it's not just me. It's like out of concern for like my country, my family, my friends, my neighbors. Like I got like it's not just my vote. Yeah. And like I just figure like the Democrats like that's just how I go for. Like I can vote for Republican.
Yeah, exactly. This is who else you gonna vote for kind of thing. But yeah, man. But that's cool. But all right, dude. Well, it's getting about, what are we at? 34 minutes? Yeah. All right, man. Well, I think we'll probably just wrap it up soon. Is there anything else you want to add?
Anything else I want to add? I mean,
I think that's pretty much, like, we covered a lot of stuff, all the way from Barnes & Noble being shitty to the fall of democracy.
No, it's been a good conversation. I mean,
yeah, man.
I'll come back anytime.
Absolutely, dude. Thanks for stopping by. And, dude, you'll come back all the time, probably. You'll be a regular. So.
Thanks.